We lost it,
It
but we're
takes
back.
it.
Okay. After all these talk about how well production was going, production went terribly, but we should be back. Where was I? Oh, yes. Zariah, the Discord mod and Reddit mod that many of you know, made the in-game overlays for me, so thank him. Rhino, who's in the booth, made the Eye of Winter logo and is responsible for doing all of the deck lists that we're using, so thank him for those. Have for some reason been taking off of artistic duty. It may be because I don't actually have any artistic ability. Another person who I need to thank is Miller Tool, who has been giving me some tips throughout this broadcast to improve the production. So um, as the stream got more stable and the production improved, that was thanks to him giving me some what was probably basic production tips, but I'm not actually very good at this. We are looking for a full-time producer, and if you're interested in producing these events, I know it's a thankless job. Believe me, I now know twice it's a thankless job. Um, we'd love to have you, so send me a line as soon as possible. But you're not here to listen to me complain about my um, production woes. You're here to talk about the bracket. And I have some good news for you guys. We are down to our top 8 players, which we will look at from the top. This is actually one of the few times that I actually get to look at the bracket since I've been doing so much else. Up at the top of the table, that didn't move very well, we have our 2 remaining players in winner's bracket, Smune and Hythar. Smune is on his Xenon Killers deck, so the sole remaining Xenon player still in there. And Hythar, we've seen a whole bunch of times on camera. He's been playing Combray aggro fast, and he's been playing it well. So that match is going to be waiting until we've cut through most of the losers bracket. But we will get back to them and you will see them on camera. They are a best of 5. So, down in the losers bracket, we have plenty of match results. Babam has finally fallen to the mighty Valor J, who, after waiting for a very, very long time in round 3 to finally get his opponent, has summarily slain everybody that we've put in his path and shot his way up to losers round 7. He is playing Elysian Shimmer Pack, so he's one of the Shimmer Pack players remaining alongside his potential opponent for round 8, which is Ilya K, who's the other Elysian Shimmer Pack player still in the event. Keystone defeated Shadowfire 2-0, which knocked our final Felon Control deck out of the event. We no longer have any control decks in there whatsoever. It's just Shimmer Pack, Combray, and aggro decks. Well, aggro mid-range decks. Keystone is playing the Shimmering Combray list that has been ever so popular at this event and doing pretty well. As you just saw on screen, Goblin Queen finally knocked Kronos out of the event, playing his own Combray aggro deck, and he is facing off against Impulsi, who I'm sad to say defeated our sideboardless Mad Mike on his Stonescar Maulers list in the 6th round of the losers bracket. That match will be going on very shortly. Impulsi is also on a Shimmering Combray. So we've got 2 Shimmering Combray, 2 Elysian Combray left in the event. In the upper bracket, we have Xenon Killers versus Combray aggro. Goblin Queen being the other Combray aggro list. And our final player is Jello Moose on Rakano, who awaits the winner of Goblin Queen and Impulsi. So, that is our top 8 players for this event. We're getting very close to the end, but there's still going to be a whole bunch of matches. Since there's only going to be, 2 or 3 matches per round, we're going to get as many on camera as possible, while still getting this broadcast completed in the same time. Still going to be another few hours, guys, but I hope you're enjoying it. Whew. All right, so Rhino has provided me with Impulsi's Shimmering Combray list, and since our next match is going to be Goblin Queen versus Impulsi, let's put that up. You still with me, Rhino?
I am.
All
I
right.
am still making deck lists, turns out, and the one I'm working on right now is not importable. So fun times. But yes, I'm here. I am here. Let's talk about decks.
All right. Well, please excuse any additional production hiccups that we have, as I am now talking and trying to maneuver around at the same time. I'm going to let you take the lead on this one while I try to get Goblin Queen and Impulsi ready to go for their next match.
Okay, so we just saw Goblin Queen massively play against Rakano, so we can we'll we'll talk about that list again in a little bit, but instead we'll start off with Impulsi, who is on Shimmering Comberry, which we saw at the very start of this tournament. Oh, this is a very different approach. This is less base Combray than the one we saw earlier, not featuring any Awakened students still playing Initiate of the Sands, that sort of thing. Has one main deck crystallized, but still mostly just Combray with some Permafrost and Scouting Parties. It's the same idea, but opting to still play like the Talier's Favorite Temple Scribe base to go with the double up on Shimmer Pack. Still has the 4 Obelisks, 4 Sandstorm Titans, a couple Mares and Disciple, but using Justice to its fullest for Vanquish, Knight Chancellor Seraph, and Stand Together and Desert Marshal. Just the classics, if you will. So we've got basically 2 different flavors of go wide Combray, right? One opting to be able to play Scouting Party, Crystallize, and Shimmer Pack. The other trying to be a bit more streamlined in just playing Combray. So as we talked about before, you can sacrifice consistency in deck building for power. And in a longer game like this matchup entails, that power can certainly be a boon. Having access to things like Crystallize that Impulsi has here is going to be absolutely massive in what essentially can boil down to almost a mirror match, right? You've got 2 decks going wide, playing Xenoblists, trying to buff up their units. So both are just going to have big units bouncing off each other. But Impulsi has Crystallize and Shimmer Pack. Now, Goblin Queen, on the other hand, we didn't get to see it much in the last match because Goblin Queen needed to still handle Rakano's early aggression. But in this matchup, this is where that transformative sideboard's really going to shine, right? We've got all those harsh rules and Martial Ironthorns that just love board stalls, especially Martial Ironthorn. So that'll be really interesting to see how both players approach the post-board matchups here because of what Goblin Queen sideboard represents and what Impulsi has just overall. Like normally the very long game favors the deck that can bust the board stall easily. And they both actually have a lot of tools to do that now because Martial Ironthorn on one side, Suit of the Prophecy, like Goblin Queen came ready for this matchup. We talked about it before. We were talking about their 13 card sideboard. Sure, they could have had a couple more cards in the board, but they have the cards for the Shimmer Pack / Combray matchup. Like that's what all these cards are. We didn't really see them side in anything against Rakano. They're like, my main deck's fine against Rakano. We need the sideboard for the other matchups. So, this should be some good matchups. I don't know how long we've got until
we should be good. They should be going in now.
They're going in now. Awesome. So this should be a pretty cool matchup. It's going to be. We're going to get into some board stalls and top deck wars. Goblin Queen can get under with some Awakened student pressure, so that'll be like the big angle that Goblin Queen's going to try and find game 1. There really isn't many other differences between the lists game 1 other than the Shimmer Pack versus Awakened student. Really, they're playing a lot of similar cards in terms of Seraphs and Titans and Disciples and Obelisks, and Goblin Queen has Enforcers. The Shimmering Combray list doesn't quite have the fixing to think Enforce is a great choice. So yeah, there's some small but significant differences between. They're both trying to execute the same plan, but going about in pretty different. Twinbird Sauropod, shout out to that dude. 2 dinosaurs for the price of 1 card. Can't really beat that kind of value. So you go, Impulsi. That card's actually really good in this matchup. Getting 2 large, significant bodies.
All right.
Really sweet.
Here we go.
Oh, and here we go. All right. Sounds good. Let me make sure I'm actually watching
the correct game. All right. Yeah. So here we got Goblin Queen starting off with pretty run-of-the-mill hand for Combray aggro. He's got a couple 2-drops. He's got an Obelisk to back him up. And we've got Impulsi with an Initiate, but not really a whole lot of power to back that up. He does have a Nomad if he can get there. But he's actually on the double initiate single power plan. So if any of these happen to get silenced, he'd be in a whole bunch of trouble.
Yeah, and then Goblin Queen's got the double awakened student into obelisk and stand together plan, so that's a good plan to be on. Got to be a little careful about this dance with awakened students and vanquish and stuff in this mirror. It'll be interesting to see how Goblin Queen approaches that.
Well, it looks like Impulsi's been able to draw out of his power troubles, and he's basically trucking along. If he can land that
Yeah,
obelisk with those scouting party Yetis, he's probably going to be able to stall the board for a pretty long time against just about
yeah, this
anything
is
that.
looking. Yeah, it's looking real good for Impulsi here. He's got answers to this early aggression and got all the fixing now. And it doesn't look like Goblin Queen's going to be trying to attack the initiates. It doesn't have a way to. Ooh. Ooh. Impulsi interestingly decides to play the banner instead of the seat, which means he's not guaranteed to be able to play the party next turn. Ooh. That could come back to haunt him. He didn't really have a need for that fifth power on this turn if he was going to just play an obelisk.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's possible that he thought about using Stand Together there, but then thought better of it. Or he
Yeah.
may have just thought that both were seats. I know I've done that before, but you're right. That was almost certainly not the right line.
Yeah, that could come back to haunt him here. We'll see. I mean, Goblin Queen's not putting up a ton of pressure here, but gets to hold up the stand together if she wants to.
Well, he decides to go with a more aggressive line of playing the obelisk and getting in there. If
Right.
he could see the hands, and he felt that Impulsi would be lucky, he might have wanted to use that Enforcer to start attacking his initiates. But it looks like he just wants to get the pressure down before all the units come out.
So now Impulsi's got some options here. He could just bank the 4/4, leave up stand together. Could swing with everything. All right, that's aggressive. Who's the beatdown? All right, that's always the question here. Who's actually trying to end this game quicker? If you swing with everything, aren't you saying I'm going to use Vanquish here? And yeah, that's what Impulsi is. And then leaving up Desert Marshal or taking out a power. Decides not to take out the power from the initiative. And you know what? If Goblin Queen plays this Enforcer here on an initiate, Halsey still can't cast the best card in this matchup. Okay, it unlocks the 5/5. That makes a lot more sense. Wow.
So he's just getting in there and then expecting the stand together to push him through. This does put Impulsi under a pretty significant clock, but he happens to have the one card that could both slow down the attack and um, stabilize him in the scouting party.
Yeah, the scouting party helps for sure. It's a lot of tutus on this board. They're about to become 3/3s. So that's big. These vanquishes are absolutely miserable in Goblin Queens.
Yeah, I
And
imagine that those will be coming out in the post board games.
yeah, well, people have been keeping them in so far post board against Shimmer Pack, interestingly enough, just because they think hitting the Sandstorm Titan is so important.
Sandstorm Titan is a pretty annoying card to deal with if you don't have a clean answer like that. But
And wow, Goblin Queen getting aggressive here. Sees the writing on the wall, realizes better to make exchanges with these Yetis now rather than later. Also, might force Impulsi to give up some power from these initiates.
how do you block here? What's the best line to keep yourself
Ooh,
safe?
I think, yeah, I do what Impulsi's doing and just not actually value these initiates in any way. Your opponent only has one power up. There's nothing you really have to play around here other than maybe, I don't know, a finest hour. It looks like is Impulsi just blocking? I would not just block that. Yeah, okay. Wow, blocking with everything. Okay, sure. So you're giving up 2 Yetis here? Boy, this is tough. I don't know if I would blocked with quite this much. Your opponent is at 17.
Hmm.
This is tough. I'm not sure. It's a question of how much you're willing to give up. Yeah. I think triple blocking the 2/5 is fine, and not blocking the 4/4. Okay, it just opts to go to 2. Do you think you can crack back for lethal?
He does have that stand together to boost his guys, so
Yeah,
it's
well,
not.
okay, well, first you can cycle with Scribe anyways and figure it out. Because let's see, because you're only cracking back for 15 and they have a blocker, so it's not lethal.
You draw a bunch of cards, you put them under a lot of pressure, and you should be able to. Well,
The problem is you're at 3.
how many guys can you toss in there, right? I guess is the
Yeah,
question.
the answer is all of them. And opts to trade. Yeah, okay. I don't know if I would have swung with all 4. I think I would have hedged on 3. Yeah, you still have 3 blockers back, and you have Aegis on all of them.
And
So it's
he's
not
only
like your opponent can really mess with that.
there aren't any charge units in Cambrai, so there's nothing
No, the,
missing.
the only reach you're worried about is Finest Hour, and you have enough blockers to deal with Finest Hour. And yeah, Goblin Queen is in a rough spot.
This is what happens if you can't put enough pressure on early against Shimmer Pack.
Yeah,
They're eventually gonna stall the board, and then if you don't have the reach, you can't close them out.
yeah. As we alluded to before, Scouting Party is basically the best card in this matchup, and I think it kind of showed off why here. When it came down, it just totally swung the board in impulses.
Scouting Party is the best card in a lot of matchups,
Yeah.
both historically and now. It's pretty powerful. I'm seeing these Shimmer Pack decks. I'm very glad that it went up to 6 power instead of 5. If it was 5, I'd be having some Wump nightmares. That's for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. They decided to lower its power level a bit, but also make it a bit more splashable. The single primal cost is a boon to it for these kind of decks, right? It's a bit more playable in these 3 factions.
Hmm. So we're looking
So
at Goblin Queen's sideboard here, and I think I just want to take a minute to appreciate the sheer genius of the 13 card plan, as always.
mm-hmm.
It takes a very skilled player to know that you only need these exact 13 cards, and there are no scenarios in which you'd need anything else. Rhino is always embarrassed because he needs the full 15 and usually submits like a 20 card sideboard that gets chopped down. But Goblin Queen does not have that issue.
Yeah,
As
that's facts. These are facts.
as for cards, though, I don't think the Goblin Queen is too much that actually is designed for this matchup per se. I don't think protects are what you want when they're just chumping your units. The Stewards can be good against the Shimmer Packs, but they don't really solve the Obelisk plan, and he doesn't have any
Uh,
decays or anything.
I think stewards are actually pretty good because they also hit things like desert marshals and stuff like that. It doesn't just hit shimmer. You can hit slow rolled Seraphs or anything. I like the stewards a lot here. I
Hmm.
really like the harsh rule Iron Thorn plan. I realize your opponent's playing stand togethers, but they don't always have it, except when they do.
I think the Harshful plan is definitely a lot safer. Well, even against the Elasian Shimmer Pack decks, it's not always safer because they could potentially have the backlash. And it, unlike with the big Combray decks, you don't have as much reload with these. You can't just play, the Mystic Ascendant and start getting all that value. So ruling your board is a very real cost, but there's not that many cards that deal really well with Scouting Party in these colors.
Right. Scouting party is Conbray's Achilles heel, and harsh rules is basically as clean as an answer as you're going to get, other than trying to play more units in a scouting party deck, which is not an easy thing to do. So it'll be interesting to see if Goblin Queen opts to just stick with trying to get under it and beat down with Awakened Students, or try and go a bit bigger and just hope that you can trump the board stalls through Harsh Rule and Martial Iron.
Well, his board's set up to go bigger. We've seen players try to go lower, so let's
Yeah,
examine for a moment if a go tall if a go
yeah,
big strategy is going to work.
yeah. Generally, slowing down the game against Shimmerpack isn't what you want to do. If you give Shimmerpack enough time, it will find a way to kill you. But at the same time, you're in a deck that's trying to be aggressive but naturally lacks reach, and that's also a recipe for disaster. So I like this Plan B transformative sideboard approach a lot.
Well, they're into the game, so let's go down there and find out.
Yep, we've got hands that are being shipped off because they don't have enough power. We're getting hands that are drawn that on one end it looks very good, and on another end looks really bad. The good end being Goblin Queen. Of course, Impulsi had this time sigil the whole time, and there was never any issue with that end at all.
No doubt at all. We've seen a fair number of skillful top decks at this tournament so far.
You put them in your deck to draw them, right?
Yeah.
Perfect power bases. So Goblin Queen's got the turn to Awaken Student. Fortunately, it's on the draw, so not getting to hit as quickly as possible.
It's a solid curve at a Goblin Queen, but it's still a lot of power in his hand. It might work well if he did board into the go big strategy. I don't actually know what his board plan is, but he doesn't have anything that's going to be able to stop that Sandstorm Titan out of Impulsi right now.
Yeah, we're gonna run into a board stall here very shortly because that's what Sandstorm Titan does. Impulsi's got plenty of tools to elongate this game. Although right now the long game is favored for Goblin Queen because of that Seraph, but we don't actually know the end game's so far away. We're just going to be sitting at mostly a stalled out board state for. At least this Awakened Student might eventually become bigger than the Sandstorm Titan, and then of course Scorpion Wasp will do their. Ooh, Steward of the Prophecy also finds a juicy target in Scorpion Wasp, doesn't it? That's fun.
Well, Impulsi doesn't actually have too much offensively in hand beyond this obelisk. If
Right.
Goblin Queen can find one of those harsh rules and reset the board, he might be able to hold enough in hand to actually rebuild himself before Impulsi can find a threat. Of course, as we've talked about, Scouting Party is the omnipresent army in a can,
Yeah.
so that might
Yeah,
not.
if I'm Goblin Queen and I just have theoretically a harsh rules in hand, I don't think about shooting off while I have a CRF in play and they don't have a scouting party.
Right.
You just don't even think about casting it. Like, all right, I've got my end game win con and they don't have their advantage at all. So Goblin Queen opting to develop power instead of using Steward and noting the pause there. I'm sure Goblin Queen noted it as well that they've got some number of ambush units that this Steward of Prophecy will be able to pull, but there's no reason to pull anything right now unless you're worried about your Seraph getting silenced, but you're not. And Impulsi is like, all right, time to start getting in.
I mean, you imagine that if your opponent had a silence at this point, they would have played it on either the Marshal, or sorry, the Awakened Student or the Seraph. So I guess you can potentially infer that your opponent has one or more Scorpion Wasps. As I don't. Does this list play Stormlinks? I don't think this list plays Stormlinks.
No, there's no Stormlinks in Impulsi's list, and I don't know if you can quite infer that yet. You can try and guess, but at the same time, you don't need to silence Seraph until you're about to hit 8 power, right? You can afford to be patient with that.
Mm-hmm.
Awakened Student gets caught up in the Sandstorm Titan. Goblin Queen decides, all right, I'm just going to block, keep this board cleared out, alleviate pressure, silence a Scorpion Wasp. Was probably hoping to silence a Desert Marshal there. He doesn't actually care about Scorpion Wasp here.
Well,
just
now he probably knows about the Wasps, having seen them.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I'm just saying, Queen Wasp just does nothing on this board state. Impulsi realizes that and is going to start attacking with it as a 2/2 flyer. That is a mode that is viable.
It's soon going to become a 3/3 flyer, and we've seen before with the Valkyrie Enforcers how much work they can do. Unfortunately, there's a Desert Marshal that's going to welcome it with open arms.
Yeah. And opts to block with the Desert Marshal instead of the 4/3.
Potentially playing around to stand together?
I don't know. If they have stand together, I kind of just want it to be out of there.
I guess.
Right. So
if that doesn't play around to stand together super well either, since it doesn't really block it.
Yeah, and now he gets a 4/6 to either attack or block with.
Well, so much for the Seraph game plan.
Yep. Right on time comes the Desert Marshal. And Impulsi hits the 8th power. The 8th power. Whew. We've got ourselves a standoff. Who's going to top deck better? Because right now they've both got power in hand. We still haven't actually figured out if Goblin Queen's opted to go on the Marshal Ironthorn or Harsh Rules plan or something like that. Obviously, the Stewards of the Prophecy came. That's all we know right now. So let's see where this game goes from here, because it's anybody's game until somebody draws the flyer.
We have lost our mainstream. We're trying to get it back.
Oh, okay.
but it
I'm s-
from the
I've
looks of
still
things,
got
it appears
both.
to be power versus power.
Yeah, yeah. Goblin Queen just top decked a Valkyrie Enforcer. It's gonna start getting in with that. But also just a lot of power on both sides. Both have drawn 10 power this game. And, Valkyrie Enforces a 5-turn clock right now. That's about all there is to it. I'm an Awakened Student for Goblin Queen. That's, I guess, a card.
Works well with all the power he's drawing.
Yeah. I'm still just so curious to see if they actually they boarded in.
You'd think we would have seen it by now, so I'm going to guess that
Yeah.
he stayed with the more lower to the ground posse. And we have
Mhm.
seen a whole bunch of Awakened students, and Awakened students and
Yeah.
Harsh Rule don't really go together that well.
Well, Impulsi drew the scouting party. Drew the answer to Valkyrie.
Does
Here we
that
go. So he's thinking about not playing this party. Maybe thinking his opponent could have been slow rolling a harsh roll or something, but you got to make him have a bunch of 3/3s. Can you pass that up? Probably wishing he had a Wump in his deck.
there's some interesting plays going on here? Is Goblin Queen slow rolls power with Awakened student in play?
You may want the power for I have no idea. Getting to 11 is pretty important. Yeah, there's the power. Because once you hit 11, then you can start slow rolling power again, right? Because that lets you play Seraph and activate it.
Mm-hmm. That's
Uh,
the critical number past 11. There is no longer the critical 16 power where you can
yeah,
double activate Seraph as she now exhausts.
yeah.
Um,
And Marizan Disciple, big draw here because it makes a 4/4 flyer conveniently.
as is the
So
case with ground
that's
stalls, evasive units are your way through.
yeah. Of course, Goblin Queen's about to go to 32 health, which is an 8-turn clock for this Locust to get through. So we've still got a lot left. Oh, let's change that to a 7-turn clock if he decides to shoot off this stand together right now. Not sure if he will. I doubt it. Huh. Stand together is a very good draw, though. That makes this a lot tougher for Goblin Queen to deal with. Now Goblin Queen's going to have to find a proactive answer rather than a reactive.
I think
Justice Sigil is neither of those.
I think he's still looking for Seraph as the best card on this,
Seraph would be very good.
as with most
Oh,
boards.
God.
That's it's gonna be a tough one for him to beat.
He's trying to figure out if he can just A space here. You are at 12, so you've got to be wary of a crackback. Or how much do you meter out here? Do you just swing with just the flyer still? Do you try and get in with some Yetis or some non-Yetis and let the Yetis stay back until the board is cleared out? You got a lot of decisions to make here. He's opting to swing with Yetis, force some blocks here to really make this stand together incredible.
So Impulsi
Yeah,
is showing.
Impulsi is playing like you don't have stand together, and Impulsi shows that they in fact do annihilate Goblin. And there's no way for Goblin Queen to draw 2 harsh rules in one draw step. So I think, yeah, Goblin Queen sees the writing on the wall here.
Okay. So it looks like then our Shimmery Combre will be moving on, and another one of our Combre aggro decks will be falling to the wayside here.
Yep, just the parties are just too hard. Can't handle it.
I was quite a fortunate Desert Marshal draw by Impulsi. A couple of draw steps there that really
Oh yeah, yeah.
brought him in the
That
game.
was the Fun Police showed up right on time, and didn't go to 3 games. So thanks a lot, aReNGee. Neon left, and now we don't get to go to 3 games in our real sad time.
We're speeding up. All
Yeah.
right. Well, next up will be losers bracket round 7 action. We've had a fair amount of stream troubles this particular one. I'm going to see if I can fix those, but we'll be back shortly with our next round. I'm not sure if we'll be following Impulsi or jumping over to the other match. We'll be
All
right
right.
back.